Hello and welcome to Avasant's digital forum, How to Supercharge Your Enterprise, Hybrid, Multi-Cloud, and Beyond. This event is presented in partnership with HCL and IBM. We're incredibly thankful to have HCL as a partner for this event. We're thrilled they have joined us as a co-host to highlight these renowned thought leaders. We thank you again for your partnership. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to today's moderator, Naresh Lachmandas. Naresh is a former CIO of General Atomics, L3 Communications, and the City of San Diego. He's currently a principal and senior fellow at Avasant. Naresh, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you, Adriana. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today as we delve into a very interesting subject area that has been a challenge for most IT leaders. The quick question is, how do we accelerate transformation with an effective hybrid multi-cloud strategy to maximize the benefits to the business while minimizing disruption? That's really key, minimizing that disruption. Each migration is very unique. The migration process requires you to make important decisions about your applications in the context of your new cloud environment and business needs. It's never easy. And now the COVID crisis has accelerated this need for this transition across every industry as companies have to adapt to the changing dynamic conditions to ensure survival and business continuity. And for those companies that have already started down this path, this journey, they need to keep pushing the bar higher to stay ahead of the competition. While IT budgets have been significantly impacted due to COVID-19, the adoption of the cloud remains the one bright spot. Many organizations are accelerating their journey to the cloud to drive agility and elastic scalability in an uncertain business environment. But single cloud model cannot fit the diverse requirements and workloads across all lines of business and application stacks. Is 2020 the year that enterprise applications finally go native cloud and hybrid multi-cloud deployment models become the norm? So this digital forum will provide some tactical insights, such as how does one make a business case and start this journey with the hybrid multi-cloud environment? How does the native cloud strategy fit into the digital transformation roadmap? With so many vendors and choices and business models, how do you ensure sustainable ROI and alignment with your business goals? And what is the value of partnering with service integrators to ensure successful cloud migration? We have a distinguished set of panelists who are going to share some insights. Alan Flower, Senior VP and CTO and Global Head Cloud Native Labs at HCL. Dr. Avasant Mensah, GM, General Manager of Cloud and Edge Ecosystem at IBM, and Fred Pond, an Avasant Fellow and a former CIO at Columbia Sportswear. Sorry about that. We're partnering with HCL and IBM for this event today, and I'd like to take this opportunity to ask each of our panelists to take 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves and provide some opening remarks. So with that, Alan, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, thank you, Naresh, and good morning, good afternoon. Hello to my fellow panelists, and welcome to our audience today, Naresh. I'm Alan Flower from HCL. Delighted to join you today. I lead our cloud native labs at HCL, and it's really fair to say that I spend my days helping our clients around the world transform their businesses with cloud, and increasingly for us and our clients, we often talk about that transformation being a cloud native journey.
Sorry for the pause. 1 second. All the other panelists, please go on mute. Thank you. Sorry, Alan, back to you. I apologize for the interruption.
Thank you, Naresh. So look, I spend my days helping our clients around the world on their businesses with cloud, and increasingly that often means what we would call a cloud native journey. It's been quite encouraging in recent years to see just how many large enterprises around the globe have effectively reinvented themselves, their key processes, their value chains around cloud. This has also driven a huge technology shift within our industry too, and we see that every day. So I'm looking forward in this call to discussing some of those things that we see, and of course sharing with you some of the good behaviors that we see as well. So pleased to be here, Naresh.
Thank you. Avasant, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Naresh. So I am Avasant Mensah. I'm the General Manager for IBM Cloud and Edge Ecosystem. I also focus on the Cloud Paks. And I work with a broad set of ecosystem partners, whether they're some of the hardware manufacturers that we have, especially that support our hybrid cloud mission, but also Edge, or whether we talk about independent software vendors or global systems integrators, such as Alan and the team here. And the intent is to make sure that we provide them with a horizontal platform. We work with them on enablement as they work with their clients on their journey to the cloud. And so we also here, through our global systems integrators and also through the work that we do directly with clients, working with our partners, the pains that they feel going through the journey, the advantage of having the right type of platform, having the right type of partners to support you, and building the right type of culture around some of these transformation efforts. And I'm very happy to share some of that with the team here in the panel.
Thank you, Avasant. Fred, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Naresh. My name is Fred Pond, and I was a CIO for 22 years between 1995 and 2017 for 4 different Pacific Northwest area companies, 1 in Seattle, 3 in the Portland, Oregon area. I finished my career, the last 7 years of my career at Columbia Sportswear, the outdoor apparel and footwear company here in Portland, and really spent my time there taking them on a cloud journey between 2010 and 2017. I now am a part-time consultant and also an Avasant fellow. And in that role, I now help Avasant align and make sure that they keep that perspective of the CIO in their services and make sure that they're always bringing value to their clients. As I mentioned, I started my cloud journey in 2010 with Columbia Sportswear. And at that time, it was an in-house on-prem cloud, a fully virtualized landscape to allow us to move workloads between different data centers and have redundancy and DR. And so that's kind of the background I've got, and I continue to evolve that environment at Columbia over the next 7 years before retiring again in 2017. As you can see from this, I have my COVID haircut on. Haven't had a haircut since February. And I've got my cabin beard because I've spent the last 5 weeks working on a construction project in the backwoods of Idaho at a family cabin. Thanks.
Fred, thank you. And I'm sure they're very happy that you took them through that cloud journey because they're probably benefiting from that change, that transformation you did back then. Thank you again. So to our audience, we'd like to take them to make this a very interactive session. We set about 15 to 20 minutes aside for Q&A. So feel free to ask questions using the Q&A section. In certain cases, our panelists attempt to answer them in real time, and we'll look for opportunities as appropriate to verbalize the questions of panelists during the dialogue. And we, of course, will have some time at the end as well. We'll be also conducting polls, and we'll share the results during the dialogue. This digital forum will be recorded and be made available to you. So let's get going. Alan, I'd like to turn this over to you. So this pandemic has created a sense of urgency for companies to put aside their barriers, their resistance to transition to the cloud. What are some of the struggles and challenges that companies will face in their journey?
Well, Naresh, hasn't the world changed? I mean, it is utterly incredible, the change that we've seen. And I think, despite the terrible human kind of impact of COVID-19, I think this experience has shown, I think, just how well some companies have rapidly adjusted. It seems that some very fortunate companies have just simply, not missed a beat. Those might be the companies that have already kind of undertaken their cloud transformation. So it's probably not been surprising, I think, how many organizations have suddenly seen the benefits that kind of transformational journey could bring them. And there is this urgency, I think, that we all see to kind of adopt this cloud native posture as quickly. But we mustn't overlook, I think, the key fundamental challenge here. What companies are trying to do is drive real business transformation. This, after all, is a journey about making ourselves COVID kind of resilience. So there's more to this journey, I think, than just moving IT or just moving your stuff. to cloud, you're trying to fundamentally change your business processes. You're probably re-engineering the value chains within your organization at the same time. And I think, many of us have, I think, expressed this in recent weeks. We see a lot of companies perhaps trying to achieve perhaps 10 years worth of transformation in 10 weeks or indeed 10 days or less. So it's been quite remarkable. And there are challenges, of course. I mean, no one's suggesting that this is an easy journey. Undertaking this amount of transformation so quickly, of course, is quite a challenge. But look, I think there's companies today that have rapidly moved forward in the last 3 or 4 months have probably got one huge advantage. We all benefit from the good work that's been done by others in recent years. Think about all of the pioneering work, maybe all the pain, all the failures that companies have experienced in the years before today. In some respects, whilst it is challenging, there's just so much good work that we can reuse and we can learn clearly from the good experience of others. And I think, in some respects, and I'm sure today, we're going to talk a lot about the challenges around probably what I would see as a hybrid kind of multi-cloud, journey. That is potentially a terribly complex journey for any organization to undertake. But, believe me, today it's so much easier than it might have been 3 or 4 years ago. You can obtain a lot of the enablers for the change off the shelf. It's not a case of having to build things, from scratch. And of course, once you've taken a lot of these commoditized kind of, components off the shelf and you start to think about what your journey is going to look like, I mean, there are those challenges there. And perhaps, one of the most common ones, of course, is just figuring out where you're going to apply your investment. I mean, you need to be very selective. And let's not forget that after all, you're really seeking, transformation here. And a good example, I think, is just one example that I'm sure we can debate further, is we often see clients, trying to maybe try to take too much on it once. And maybe a first initial step that we see so many successful journeys begin with is just thinking about where you're going to make your investments. Let's try and get some low-hanging fruit. Let's try and get some early impact. A good example would be, and I'm sure we'll talk about this further, what applications am I going to enhance to sort of support this transformation? Where do I want to, make these changes? So, in summary, Naresh, yes, there is a challenging journey ahead. It's been done by so many other companies. We can reuse the approaches and patterns that others have applied successfully before. The technology is readily available. There are challenges there, but it is so much more straightforward than it was even a few years before.
That's quite, just hearing what you're talking about. It's a challenge, but I'm glad to see that the progression is happening a lot faster. So thank you for that, Alan. Fred, let me turn it over to you. It's really cloudy out there. We have a public cloud, a private cloud, then on-premise cloud. Then we have the hybrid and the multi-cloud. Can you please shine some light into this situation?
Sure, happy to do that, Naresh. Obviously, there are a ton of cloud terms and they keep growing and morphing. I think the keys are just some basic understanding of some call out and definition. The 3 major cloud environments, the on-prem cloud, it's where I started at Columbia, and as I mentioned in 2010, when we created a fully 98% virtualized VMware-based redundant data center independent workload movable cloud situation. So that was where we started. And if you're really late to the game and haven't moved to the other kinds, my guess is you're probably in that sort of a cloud situation today in your environment if you have not started to adopt the other ones. Public cloud, obviously, the big boys, the AWSs, the Azures, the Googles, the IBMs, the Oracles are the major players there, and some niche players like Pivotal. And I call out Pivotal because in 2015, after we had been comfortable on our on-prem cloud for a number of years, we had to move and create a hybrid situation where we could move workloads outside of our own walls to get scalability and flexibility the way we wanted. So we ended up looking at a lot of different solutions. Pivotal, with the tight connections to VMware, was the first one to be able to allow Columbia Sportswear to push workloads from our internal on-prem cloud out into a public cloud. And we brought those workloads in and out, adopting all of our security, all of our authentication, everything else about it in a seamless way. So it was just sitting at a screen, moving the workloads. So that was our evolution to that hybrid situation. And then obviously the third major category are the private clouds. And private clouds are workload specific, trying to accomplish certain tasks. A lot of applications fit into these. Workday or Kronos or NetSuite, those kind of solutions are in those kind of a private cloud situation that are specific purposed for their applications. As I mentioned, hybrid is where you're going to start using more than one kind of cloud. So in my environment at Columbia, we started with on-prem cloud. We went to the public with, and then we also started to layer in a lot of private clouds around certain applications. The keys on that are how can you manage and make sure that you have the right security and the right authentication, and you're not dealing with multiple passwords and authentication and challenges for the end users across all those environments. And that you need to make sure you get on top of early on in the evolution there. From a multi-cloud situation, I think most big companies now are probably also in a multi-cloud. That says that you're using either more than one, two or more public cloud situations, private cloud situations, or a mix of both. And I say most every big business today of any kind is dealing with that, because so many applications are only driven through a cloud, whether it's a Concur for expense management or a SuccessFactors for HR and things like that, to time and attendance and those things. So most are in those environments today. Everybody is evolving. I don't think there's any way you could pick a single cloud solution and be successful in your business today. The demands of the business are just too great, and the needs of how you are going to deliver services and keep your job as a CIO are too great to not be in that hybrid multi-cloud environment where you're bringing the best solutions to your business in the quickest way possible.
Okay. Great, thanks for that clarity. And I'm sure creating a support structure for this and laying it all out is going to be a challenge. I believe we're going to cover that a little later in the session. Thank you for that, Fred. So,
Sure.
Now, so CIOs are struggling to balance innovation with stability, negotiating complexity, grappling with the scale, and retaining valuable skills. How does one go about managing these complex multi-cloud environments? So turn it both to Avasant and Fred. Feel free to have this dialogue and interact on this one.
Yeah, thank you very much, Naresh. I mean, I think Fred laid this out really nicely, right? Because you look at, if you are in a hybrid multi-cloud environment, the portfolio inventory will consist of different cloud providers, as Fred said, different platform providers, different solution providers, and infrastructure providers. And you can see the permutations quickly get daunting. And if you, as a CIO, you don't really have a good service provider to help you through this process, it can sometimes feel as if you are the contractor negotiating quality of service issues with different vendors and determining who should be fixing what. So I think it's really important that you have a strong technology partner that will help you manage the end-to-end, not just the silos that are created, but the fact now that you now live in a number of different clouds. This may not be what you ordered, but that's just the world that we live in, as Fred said. I think you also need a really good set of management tools. And what CIO is really looking for is something that is open, it's an open architecture that can help you integrate with others. So not just something that works by itself, but you can integrate to bring data sources from other areas as well. That allows you to manage and move workload between clusters. So you can manage applications, both those that are container-based, but also those that are in a VM environment, giving you a common plane from which you can observe if your applications are meeting or exceeding your quality of service standards, your SLAs, your security and your governance requirements and your capacity and all of that. So I think the management plane becomes really important. And if you think about having edge installations where you're not dealing with hundreds of servers, but and not multiple clouds, but you're dealing with thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of different devices, the management problem gets much more complex. And therefore, it's really important that you have a good set of management tools that provide you with this single pane of glass through which you can see whether you're meeting your requirements or not. Now, Red Hat, together with IBM, we provide these technologies that help solve some of the management problem, like the cloud platform, multi-cloud management, and a whole portfolio from Red Hat that enable that as well. But I think, when you get into the COVID world, where the ability to do more with less has never been greater, I think the ability to manage clearly from a single plane and to do that in an automated fashion becomes even more important.
Great, every sister. Fred, any comments on your side?
Yeah, I think he hit on some really key points, and it is about manageability and cost management, especially now with COVID. I had the luxury that I built a team internally, and we were able to evolve them and get them to learn tools, adopt DevOps, adopt cloud integrations and seamless work over many years. Obviously, if you're late to the game and you're coming in now, I can't agree more with him when he says you've got to leverage, whether it's integration partners, tool partners, and things, because you just can't take the time to build a team and do it. There's too much change going on. It's a much faster pace than, we always say it gets faster and faster every year or every decade or so. It is clearly that these days. And I think the last 4 months has shown that the need for speed and the need to react to it is absolutely critical to it. So I think you cannot now develop internally. You want to have a solid internal team. You've got to work on how you restructure that team. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later, but you've got to be ready for these challenges and leverage a great partnership. And it could be multiple partnerships in today's complex world around authentication, around security, around managing that single pane of glass. So if you're just getting started now, high on your list needs to be how you're going to partner and how you're going to get help, because you need to move quickly.
Thank you, Fred. And that the agility that you both talked about of how companies are moving faster is going to be so amazing for them to remain competitive, or in this case, sustain their business moving forward in this crisis. I'm going to take a pause for a minute. I believe we have some audience questions. Adriana, do you want to share a question to the panelists?
Absolutely. Okay, so the first question is, how do we foresee the customer spending on multi-cloud and targeted public cloud post-COVID scenario? Would you expect a major change in terms of cloud adoption before and later?
Alan, Everest, any of you want to take a shot at that one?
Well, I'll give you my perspective. I think the question was, well, what sort of change are you expecting? It seems really clear to me, if our client conversations are anything to go by, that everyone's journey is accelerating. All right, I think it's probably true to say that all organizations have been on a cloud journey for quite some time, but that journey now seems to be moving with a lot more urgency, but also it's more heavily transformational. So I think maybe the one big change I'm seeing is the really significant transformation is accelerating. They're not treating the cloud in the same way. They really want it to drive transformation very hard indeed.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that as well. I completely agree with that, based on conversations talking with clients as well, which is that I think there's a clear recognition that you need to get more agile, right? If you look at the companies that kept going, that did well, the companies that were able to switch their business model very quickly and pivot to go do something else. When you think about the applications that we have running businesses, talk about these 80% of applications that haven't moved yet, many of those applications don't change that easily. And so what we're seeing clients talking about is, how do I really begin to transform and modernize these applications to give me the same flexibility that some of the early starters that don't necessarily have a lot of incumbency have? And therefore, I think more work around modernizing that infrastructure, I think, will become more imminent.
Thank you.
So I'll just add one last comment around the cost side of it. I think these changes are a challenge on the cost side because you're moving a lot of different things from a CapEx to an OpEx. You're looking at different models on being charged on how much usage there is. Sometimes that's very difficult to analyze and understand before you go in and start to make some of these changes. So I think there are no question that there's challenges around get your arms around the cost models and how you can make sure that you don't commit to something and then come back with sticker shock down the road and say, oh my God, I never thought that utilization would become that kind of a monthly bill versus what used to be a big cap and then depreciated over 5 years.
You know, that was a very appropriate question because it leads me to my next cue to you, Alan, was, you know, as companies on legacy platforms trying to move to the cloud, they typically, you know, look at a lift and shift. What's wrong with that? And what's some of the value props of modernizing legacy platforms? You know, this is a very interesting discussion because people just think, I'm just going to move. But how do we make this a better journey for them?
You know, that's a really good question, Naresh, and it cuts across the point Fred's just made, but also Everest's comments as well. It was certainly the case, if we look back a few years, maybe in the earlier days of cloud, that the cloud then was a completely different animal to what we see today. The rate of change in innovation from all of the cloud providers has been absolutely mind-blowing, in my opinion, in recent years, and it's just bewildering in terms of the rate of change. So cloud today is a completely different animal to when we started a few years back. And you know, if I look into the recent past, a really common journey was for clients. Maybe they were taking tentative baby steps back then, you know, Naresh, but clients probably looked at the cloud as nothing more than infrastructure, right? It was another data center, but it was someone else's data center. So this is where this kind of fabled and kind of much maligned kind of lift and shift kind of you know, journey originated, and it was probably the only journey available to many companies, you know, in the past. It was perhaps too difficult, too painful to contemplate modernizing my applications in the right way for cloud. So it probably wasn't surprising that many companies simply lifted what they had, moved it to cloud. And we often talk about a V2V journey, virtual machines moving from one place, you know, to the other. So what's wrong with that? Well, you could argue perhaps not too much. You know, it might give you the opportunity to shut down your kind of legacy data center and kind of just move your consumption to someone else's. But we've already touched on this core theme of transformation, and certainly in this world now flavored heavily by, you know, the impact of COVID, we need our cloud journey to be more than just transition. It's not about moving, it's about changing, and it's about changing fundamentally, you know, my business. So the real challenge with lift and shift is I'm simply moving workloads from one place to another. You could say I'm simply moving problems from one place, you know, to another, and I get no inherent advantages from that move. I mean, where's the speed? You know, where's the innovation? Where's the agility that will allow me to transform my business? It's very hard to see those benefits from this kind of traditional, you know, lift and shift approach. And that's why, you know, just bringing the conversation more up to date, many clients now, their thinking has evolved quite considerably. And we know, of course, it's a lot easier to modernize applications today. If you look at the impact that you know, platforms like Kubernetes, for example, are having on our industry. If you look at the impact of things like the IBM Cloud Paks, they massively simplify the modernization journey for my applications, and hence those disadvantages of lift and shift are now so much more easily avoided than in the past, because the alternative, which is, you know, transformation, modernization, changing the way that I I maybe design applications, they're changing the way I kind of provision and indeed manage applications. All of that transformation now is so much more easily within reach. So yes, there are still negatives attached with that lift and shift journey. You will get sticker shock, I think was Fred's expression. If you're just lifting up your infrastructure, dumping it in a cloud provider, then you've probably got some sticker shock coming your way. But as I've said, it is so easily avoided today. And this is, I think, the great thing for those companies that are now accelerating their journey post-COVID. You can really stand on the shoulders of giants. Someone else has been there and done it, and now they've made the journey so much more straightforward for you.
That's really amazing. And I believe it's a big challenge for a lot of companies to go to transformation, but that agility component is key. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, So, what's your perspective, the advantage of a hybrid multi-cloud over a public cloud only strategy? Just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thanks, Naresh. I mean, there are numerous surveys out there, right, point to just the wide adoption of hybrid multi-cloud strategies. We talked about, Fred mentioned that, and you just heard Alan talk about that as well. And in fact, I've seen surveys that talk about 11, each company having on average 11 clouds. So if you're listening to this and you have less than that, you're doing well, you're on the lower side. But then you look at the workload that has actually moved to the cloud, and some work from a few years ago suggests maybe 20% has moved already. Maybe if you want to argue with that, maybe 30%. But certainly the fact is that after years and years of doing this, the vast majority of the workload is yet to move. And the remainder of that workload is big, difficult, complex, right? So it involves core applications and workloads. It involves things that you need to do to optimize supply chains. Exactly the thing that we need to be doing in the post-COVID world, all the way from supply chain to sales. So it's a journey, right? And clients are at different stages, and they can't simply stop on-prem operations and switch to cloud operations the next day, right? So in many cases, there are actually strong arguments for not moving some of the workload at all, right? There may be regulatory reasons, there may be data residency requirements, there may be latency issues associated with that. So with clients at different stages, we need to meet them where they are and help them take these workloads to the cloud successfully and securely. And by the way, make sure that their workloads for the right cloud as well. And Fred made this point about not all clouds serve all use cases, right? So make sure that you identify the right type of cloud for it. And at any stage, they have some workload in data centers. They have some cloud native applications. They may be actually running on-prem, but they are cloud native. Some of them may be in any number of public clouds. So hybrid will be the business reality for our clients for a very long time. So wherever we look, we see more and more clients. We see the competition accepting this as well, the logic of a hybrid multi-cloud, which is infused with AI, right? So you need a hybrid cloud strategy, which by definition includes a combination of the different clouds, as Fred said earlier on. And what we see is that this actually unleashes the full potential of the cloud. In fact, this is 2.5 times, there's some studies done by McKinsey that we looked at, 2.5 times more value than a public-only strategy. And why is that? Well, this is driven by you get the opportunity to migrate the applications that you need in your own time. You can eliminate duplicate tools very, very quickly. You can lower your cost of certification. You can reduce your risk. You have architectural flexibility, because you get to use what you have and then slowly migrate from there. But to make this work, you need a robust, horizontal, enterprise-grade, secure container Kubernetes platform to enable you to build and to run anywhere, right? So part of the sticker shock that Alan talked about comes from the fact that you may not be able to move because you made the choice on cloud, and you're locked into that cloud. You may not realize you're locked into it until you need to move. So the ability to run this anywhere is something that we're hearing more and more from our clients. So IBM's container Kubernetes platform is Red Hat OpenShift and the Cloud Paks. I'm glad Alan talked about that. And the advantage is that it enables clients to modernize and write cloud native applications to run them anywhere, and it reduces the skills requirement to do so. So you can use them to drive data modernization, to support your journey to AI, you can use them for security. And because they are pre-integrated, as Alan said, they reduce the skills requirements to deploy and run them. So it's importantly, the Cloud Paks and Red Hat OpenShift also provide tools to help with the management. I mentioned this earlier. So in our view, the future really is hybrid, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
That's thank you for that clarity. Adriana, any questions from the audience you want to share with us?
Yes, we have some good ones. Does anyone agree that IT needs to reinvent the IT architecture with closer alignment with business architecture given cloud opportunities? I only separate the architectures because governance can support each area differently.
Fred, your thoughts?
Yep, I'm off mute, I think. So definitely the alignment between business and functional architects and technical architects have to blend together as you take this on. There are so many great solutions out there now that the business is going to be looking at. And if you're not, as a CIO, out there promoting and getting that work to be done and bringing those kind of wins into the business in a quick and easy way, you're going to be missing out and you're going to be looking for a job. So I think what we see is there are all these great cloud apps, great startups, great things, and you have to be aware of those and you have to be able to be leveraging those to make your business successful in a quick way and that stuff. And with that, you have to blend that functional architect and business architect into your technical architecture so that they can play well together. And you can't be, it's only going to be this way or it's only going to be that way. And you're going to want to leverage a lot of the tools that Everest mentioned. I think those things and Kubernetes and Docker and things like that can all be a play in how you're going to technically architect depending upon what these solutions are.
Go ahead, Everest.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to add to that. Yeah, I agree, Fred, and I do agree with the caller, the questioner. I do think that we could do better IT overall. If you look at what we can now do with driverless cars, right? That you can sit in a car, you can turn the gas on, and enter your address, and it takes you there. And that use technology, that use IT to make all of that happen. I think that IT is still not there, right? So the focus of our work, so exactly where we're headed with the Cloud Paks, is to enable us to do just that. So if you think about your Cloud Pak for automation, if you think about that portfolio, we're basically trying to help improve the way that work is done so that your average employee is as good as your smartest employee because of the use of data and AI and workflows to help them be as productive as they could be. We do exactly the same for DevOps pieces, right? Helping your IT, helping your developers be as productive as they could possibly be using the information that's there to support them. And when you think about AI Ops, and we recently announced what's in AI Ops offering. And the intent here is not only are you helping the developer work better, helping the knowledge worker work better, but you're actually helping IT work better so that you get this user information that is available in the system to create IT that is more self-healing, self-correcting, the way that it really doesn't work at the moment. So that is a vision of things that you could do using the data and AI.
So I'd like to thank you, Everest. Fred, I want to come back to you on that point. So, as you went through your journey, how did you decide which tools to use? How did you get the fast track that process to make those decisions? Right, it's new to a lot of people. Which way do I go? What tools do I use? What's your process like?
Yeah. We were early adopters, so we did some trial and error. We adopted some things early. We found other tools as it evolved. It's always going to be that way, but you got to take chances and you got to just keep pushing the team forward. The biggest thing we saw was just when you go down this path of cloud and DevOps, and if you really want to get the agility and things you want out of it, you have to blow up your teams and you have to rethink how you're going to provide infrastructure and how you're going to provide development and how you're going to bring those two things together for productivity. In the old days, we had desktop engineers, we had storage engineers, we had server engineers, we had network engineers, we had database administrators, all these silos that were embedded in how we had done IT for the last 15 years or more. And we had to blow that up. It was not an easy process to really take away those things and try to start to have really smart people that are cross-trained on a number of different things, because you don't need that deep knowledge on how to configure a SAN or a NAS or something that way. It all comes from the cloud and is bundled in and automated for you. So you get to get away from those levels of details on those different silos, and to start make not jack of all trades, but people that are, have specializations, but get to one team so that you don't have to, if you want to bring an app up, you don't have to involve 6 different teams in a linear process that takes 6 weeks to accomplish to bring up that app. Instead, a person from a team can post all of it and get it done in less than a day, and you have something new up and running in a test environment and ready to roll with it. You have to start to rip out some of those inherent delays that we built in to IT between the late 90s and 2015 or so. So we blew all that up. Not all the people could adopt it. A lot of people couldn't make that transition. We coached some out, we brought some new in, and we cross-trained the heck out of that team as we blew up those silos to make it work in our organization. And I think you have to do the same today, probably with it being tied in with a partner that is enhancing your ability to move quickly.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Everest, on that note, and you might have touched on some of this as we were responding to the question from the audience, with such change that Fred's talked about as companies struggle to meet their objectives, what are some of the tools and capabilities to assess the problem and accelerate the process? Just want to get some insights or some examples where you've seen this work effectively.
I thank you for that. I think that there's really 3 things that are important here. The first of them is that the mission really needs to be clear to the team, right? So, and the sponsor needs to be clear. Now, you talk about transformation, but actually very few companies now want big bang transformations. They want that vision of where I'm going to be in 2 to 3 years, but they also need you to show them where they're going to be in 2 to 3 months, so that you can start with a very, very small, safe, small piece of the pie, get a group of people together to work on it and develop and deliver something. So it's constantly a movement that takes place a sprint every 4 weeks that ultimately leads to a 36-month project, but the client is getting benefit on an ongoing basis. So this ability to get a small team and work in an agile fashion on specific small solutions is really helpful. The other thing that we've often hear our clients say is, I've got 4,000 applications. Where do I start? So one of the things that we included as part of the Cloud Pack for Applications is a tool called Transformational Advisor that will go into the code, review the code, and come back and enable you to do a 2x2 matrix that just shows you the complexity of the applications, the type of applications. So you can look at applications and classify them, and which ones are really complex to change, which ones are relatively simple to change. And you can also have a scale that says which ones would deliver immediate or quick value, and which ones will deliver value but in the long term. And then, so if you're thinking about creating a minimum viable product around getting a few transformation projects started, those ones that are easy to do and deliver value are hot ones that you can pick up and use very, very quickly, and then get the value from those to sort of reward the team so that they can continue to focus on doing this. So picking your platform to enable you to do this is really important. And then the third piece of that is just around the culture change, around getting this done, right? So you still have companies that are focused around command and control. And this type of work, I think Alan talked about this, is done very much as agile teams, small teams that are self-directed. They are loosely coupled, tightly aligned. They pick their own work. They pick the things that they're going to work on this week. They hold each other accountable. And nobody talks about seniority based on how much time you serve, but just what you're contributing to the teams. So it's a combination of making sure you have the right platform that will give you some of these tools that can help you, building a culture that enables you and have a team where you can work with the business and with IT to decide on which pieces you want to do, all with a North Star that is set by the CIO and the senior leadership team about where we want to go, so that when things get difficult and people want to slow down, you can explain why we did this work in the first place, why we started this in the first place.
Great. Thank you. I'm just going to fast track a little bit. So Alan, you talked about cloud native apps earlier. I believe it's about containerization. What is the difference between a standard cloud app that I just upgraded from my legacy solution? How does that, what's the difference? Maybe you can provide some clarity to help people understand the value proposition of cloud native apps.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, this is a question, I guess, about the real value of cloud native applications. And I think my answer, Naresh, really kind of extends the comments from both Fred and I think Evaristus too. I mean, we live in a world now where our businesses expect a completely different experience from IT. We live in a world where our customers expect a completely different experience with us. And those three themes, I think, around speed, agility, and innovation are really at the core of everything that I think so many of us do. And if I think back to, this experience of maybe moving applications to cloud, undoubtedly, I should be thinking about modernizing those applications in some way. Hopefully, I'm going to add some new capabilities. I think Evaristus mentioned this increasing demand to sort of infuse AI and ML capability as an example into applications. So I know that I'm going to want to make some changes to some of my applications on the way. And I think you're at the heart of your question is this kind of suggestion that, so why do I need to do this in a cloud native way? Why don't I just take my existing code, wherever that runs today, take it to the cloud, rebuild my application. I've got a cloud hosted application. But when you look at the way that the cloud offers value today, when you look at the innovation that many of the cloud providers offer, you want to expose your application to that. I mean, you want elasticity, you want scalability, you want to be able to survive and flourish in this kind of ephemeral kind of cloud world. So I will want to make changes, ideally, to my application, and that's where we talk about making a cloud native application. There are certain architectural styles, maybe coding sort of behaviors that define what makes a cloud native app. I mean, some of these changes are relatively straightforward. Others can be more challenging. But here's the big difference, I think, when we look at the industry, today. This transformation, this kind of nirvana, if you like, that I'm going to convert IT into this kind of rapid, innovation-led, agile organization was always hampered because it was just so darn difficult to make these changes to my applications. You could invest months and months assessing your applications portfolio, trying to find those kind of golden nuggets of innovation that you could apply to selected applications. It was a really painful journey in the past. But as we've all touched on, I think, Naresh, many times during this short call, there is now so much capability available to organizations, whether you're a leader, an architect, or a developer. There are tools now that massively simplify this journey. And just as an example, in HCL, you would appreciate we're often asked to move portfolios of many thousands of applications to cloud on behalf of our clients around the world. And Evaristus, I recall, just mentioned just one tool in particular, something called Transformation Advisor that IBM offer as part of their cloud pack for applications. Imagine if you really want to sort of see these benefits. Imagine if you want to move your applications from your data center to maybe a cloud native environment with one of the cloud providers. You're probably looking at moving your applications to a Kubernetes-based platform, Red Hat OpenShift, most dominant platform in the industry today. That would probably be like a really obvious choice for many clients. But then well, what do I need to do to my application so that they can take advantage of that environment? You know, for us today, we can take a tool like Transformation Advisor, and analysis work that genuinely could have taken us thousands of hours in the past. And we've got lots of examples with clients where it was, you know, a 6 or 12-month journey to really undertake this analysis. We can now do this overnight, or we can do it over a weekend. It's massively transformed the journey for so many clients. So being able to run tools like Transformation Advisor across your entire estate of legacy applications, for example, and then very rapidly being able to identify those apps that you want to invest in, be able to identify those treatments and kind of transformations that you might want to apply. Being able to get those questions answered so rapidly now just transforms the journey for everyone, and hence this ambition to transition my applications to a cloud-native posture. Increasingly, it's within reach of all clients, Naresh. It is no longer an over-the-horizon ambition. You can do that today.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. I think that really helps provide some clarity on that front. We just have I have one last question, and I'll give you a minute to respond. Basically, you know, as companies going through this journey, it's really complicated trying to manage. Customers concerned about managing across multiple platforms, multiple clouds, and the legacy, and all the investments made. Do you have an example of how you've helped customers get through that process on supporting this multi-cloud environment?
So yeah, so thanks for that. So there are a number of ways in which we're working to help. The good thing is that although skills is a major issue, there are more and more of these skills coming to the market because you know, everyone is basically using this. Everybody is using these technologies, and so there's a recognition that we need to focus more on skills. Now, one thing that we're doing, of course, is building the cloud packs. The cloud packs are containerized software that enables you to build on Red Hat. It's pre-integrated to make it easy for you to continue this journey to the cloud, whether you want to do automation, whether you want to use AI, bring AI into your work, whether you want to modernize your data, whether you want to do management, whether you want to integrate different processes, cloud packs that enable you to do that. And we look at the management problem, you know, very specifically because you understand this is important for CIOs. So whether it's cloud or whether it's edge, we've got a set of tools that enable that. And I talked earlier on about the way that we're thinking about how you can use AI ops. So you basically use artificial intelligence with the data that you get from your AI systems to help you improve not just the way developers work, the way that knowledge workers work, but also the way that IT works overall. And then a range of tools working with our ecosystem partners. One thing that we do, which is a really good way to get started, is, you know, we call it garages, and we know that our partners like HCL, they use different words for it, which is really a co-creation environment to bring together a combination of business and IT to work together to identify one little place to get started, because often the hardest part of the journey is actually where to get started. And identify one area to get started, do something, share victory in 4 weeks' time, and then continue to improve. 6 months later, you're half of the way through your own journey. But the key is, you know, identifying a key partner that will accompany you on that journey and help you succeed through it.
Thank you for that. Okay, we're running short of time. So Adriana, I'm going to turn it over to you for a question, then we'll share some poll results and then go from there. Any questions from the audience, Adriana?
Sure. Moving to the cloud requires significant organizational change management, including rapid training and reskilling for employees, contingent workforce, and partners. In the current financial crisis where IT is having budget cuts, how are organizations addressing this while ensuring the required transformation is implemented?
Anybody? Alan?
Fred, I mean, I'll take a shot at it. I think obviously COVID has thrown a curve, and especially in some businesses that have been hit very, very hard, like retailers or those kind of companies, food service, hospitality and things, where your budgets are being hit super hard. The key is you've got to understand your portfolio. And I think Everest and Alan both touched on it. You've got to leverage tools to You've got to find some quick and easy wins where you can do some things without pulling out a large team and get some wins and some momentum in this case, and leverage the tools that are available to make some of those moves. You got to make sure that you know there are going to be a lot of boat anchors in your organization and in your infrastructure that you're not going to touch. But go after those and go after things that are customer facing and customer engaging, because those can deliver increased profitability or leverage quicker. And those are the things you've got to try to focus on. That's from my perspective.
Great.
I would just add to that briefly, actually. I think Fred's made some really good point. I mean, I'd keep it really simple. Focus on those applications that generate revenue or drive the client experience. It's as simple as that. And if you can find one of those, you'll find the investment follows behind it too. If you can bring real impact to one of those domains, then clearly it's a journey that then is going to accelerate for you. And we've often found this to be exactly the case. If you can invest in those things that make money, you'll drive transformation far more rapidly, in our opinion.
Yeah, and also if you invest in things that improve agility, then you'll be more ready for the next crisis as well. So that's another area. But ask for return in 6 months. Don't ask for returns in 3 years.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. We're going to take a quick look at the polls. So Jessica, you posted poll number 1. Can you go back to 1 so we can just share the results, please? Okay, so it seems like hybrid cloud, it seems to be the primary platform that most companies are using. I can't see the percentages on my side, but it's the hybrid cloud seems to be the big one there, about 20, almost 30%. How about poll number 2? Okay, and in this scenario, let's see, what's the biggest challenge companies face when migrating to the cloud? It's definitely legacy integration we'd all talked about. And of course, these results will be made available to you offline. How about number 3? Okay, what's the single most important factor in choosing a hybrid multi-cloud vendor? And let's see, flexibility and scalability, and of course, platform capabilities. Thank you for that. So thank you, Jessica. So thank you again for our panelists. My takeaways, kudos to you for sharing your experience on how companies have successfully managed to maximize the benefits by leveraging hybrid multi-cloud strategies while minimizing business disruption. Like any major initiative, companies need a business driver, a reason to justify the change, establish a reliable strategy, and roadmap to ensure success. I'm sorry about that. They need to select the right partner to help them in their journey, and they also need to manage risks, manage the people, and ensure proper project governance and oversight. Projects like these typically have a 30 to 60% of value leakage. We cannot afford to have delays and negative costs and impacts in these difficult times. Again, it's as the team talked about, it's not just the technology aspects of the hybrid multi-cloud and the transition. There's also the people and the process components, change management, which is really a key driver to success. The business, of course, wants change. They need change, and with this crisis, it's about survival, staying ahead of the competition, the agility, as Fred talked about as well, and ensuring customer engagement. The saying goes, don't let a crisis go by without taking advantage of the opportunity. So let's leverage this crisis to knock down those typical old school walls of resistance. But we also need to focus on the details, the choices to successfully supercharge the enterprise. I'd like to take this moment to thank my esteemed colleagues, Alan, Avasant, and Fred. Again, thank you for your thought leadership. And to our audience for the involvement with the questions and the polls. And finally, thank you to our sponsors, HCL and IBM, and to the Avasant team, Jessica, Adriana, and the rest supporting us in the background. Adriana, I'm going to turn it over to you for closing comments.
Wonderful. Thank you, Naresh. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. A replay of the webinar will be available shortly on our events page. I've shared the link in the chat section. And if you have any questions that were not answered, I've also shared an email address you can reach out to. Thank you to all of our esteemed panelists. This was extremely interesting, and we again thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.